so long through my 20s, I thought that you could only be one thing. You're put in a box really by society, or at least in the UK, when you grow up and you go through school.
Yeah.
You make choice after choice.
Yep.
And each choice narrows your world until, like me, maybe you end up going to uni and studying one subject, and then you end up having a career, and you think that that's like it.
That's it. Mm-hmm.
And it's really subconscious. And some people are aware enough to not let that happen. But for me, it really became quite all consuming.
Charlie, welcome to my YouTube channel.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. A little bit intro, Charlie is based in UK. So if you don't mind telling everyone which part of UK you're from, they probably have a better idea than I do.
Sure, yeah. So I live in London, in southwest London, and I have done for about the last 10 years since I graduated from uni and started working here.
Nice.
And my family previous to that is from Oxford.
Oh, nice. So if anyone's currently or from Oxford or London, leave a comment below. Actually, Charlie is a lawyer and she's here to talk to us about copyright infringement. I'm just kidding. I don't know how many people got
I forgot my notes.
I know. You're in the wrong interview here. No, Charlie is a lawyer, but the reason why we connected is because she has always been a creative all her life, but has recently started to claim her creative identity in addition to her attorney professional identities. I've had a lot of people coming to me after a couple of videos I put out about my creative journey of how I transitioned from my corporate life doing something very different as well. And I feel like there are many people like us out there. And that's why I wanted to bring you on and share with us about how you've started to embrace your creative journey a little more and how you're kind of juggling all of that with your professional life.
I'm at the very beginning of what you've described as the creative journey. And I think I've always been creative. So as a kid, I was very creative. But as soon as I dived into the world of work, I slightly lost perspective and it fell off my radar a little bit. So the last 6 months in particular, since the third lockdown in the UK, has been a moment for me to really get back on the creative wagon and rediscover my love of making things. At the moment, I'm working on a couple of things. One is that I am sharing my artwork online, which is something I thought I would never say. And I've also set up an Etsy shop, which opened about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I've made a few sales. I mean, only a few, but, made a few sales, which is really fun. So that's going well. And then on the other hand, I also have set up an online community called the Creators Coffee Club, which is a space for, hobbyists or small business owners alike to come together and talk about creativity. And to be honest with you, that's kind of snowballed just out of being on Instagram and being an oversharer and sharing everything about my creative journey. And I was so surprised and pleasantly surprised at how much people connected with that. And it just shows that we all as creatives are going through the same ups and downs, just at different times. So that's been a really amazing space to connect with other people like yourself. I mean, that's how we connected. I DM'd you, having found your YouTube channel and really connected with your journey as well.
Yeah. First of all, congrats on the Etsy launch. I know it's no small feat, and the fact that you're getting a few sales already, and I think we talked about it, you even got a few sales from total strangers in the first 3 to 4 weeks of launch, which is a huge deal actually, because Etsy is so crowded now. It's really hard to stand out as a new shop when you just have maybe like a dozen or so products. So congrats on all the sales. It's so exciting. There's no feeling that's quite like the first few sales, especially like the first total stranger. I still remember that feeling. Yeah. And you're building a community on top of it. You said that kind of snowballed organically. So what came first? Were you planning on working on the Etsy shop already and you're just posting about your experience with that behind the scenes and then people jumped on, or the plan was to see if you could find people to connect with on Instagram first?
I mean, the very first thing was just me, my mum and my grandmother had weekly Zooms with each other during the lockdown, which was a way of connecting and catching up with each other when we couldn't see each other in real life. And we all decided to start sharing our work on Instagram as a way of, I guess, connecting with other people that we didn't know. So at the start, I was just sharing for the sake of connecting with people and finding other people that were interested in art. And that was great. And I thought, oh, a few people have asked me if I'm selling my work. Wasn't expecting that.
That's how I
Why
started.
not?
Yeah.
That's how it starts. It's always someone expressing an interest without you
Yeah.
thinking they will. And the first, me putting myself out there really led to just people giving me the reassurance, which then led me to think, oh, actually, I could possibly sell things. And as that started to bubble and I was sharing a bit more about what I was going to do, my plans to sell, people started following and engaging more, expressed vulnerability about things that I wasn't feeling particularly confident with creatively, because I'm just at the outset of my journey, and people really resonated with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so from there, it sort of snowballed into more of a community vibe on that page, which was initially called Of Charlie's Making. And I made the decision to change it into a community page and set up my shop separately, because it had just become this amazing space where we were doing community Q&As, which basically meant I came up with questions and everyone within, all of my followers, or those that wanted to take part, shared their answers on their page, and we all shared together in the answers. So it really came out of wanting to connect with people, honestly.
It's great that everything happened so organically. And, I can't emphasize enough, in 2021, just the landscape on Etsy or Instagram is very different. For you to start showing work from a more of a personal page, snowballing into a community, and then for you to set up a second page. I mean, all the work that goes behind maintaining both pages. I think it's smart of you to make that decision in the beginning, I feel like, because a lot of brands grapple with that decision later on when they have to spin off, a personal page on top of their brand page. I was recently in that boat, but you're doing both quite effortlessly, might I add, because some of your creative community want to support your artwork as well. So they're coming over to your Charlie's Making page too. So I've just been impressed by how not just fast, but it's also the quality in which it grows in the last, what feels like 5-6 months.
That's really kind. Thank you. I do appreciate that. There's an awful lot of work that goes into Instagram. I'm sure everyone sits there behind their phones thinking the same thing. And yet when you scroll through, you never pay the attention that you should to what people put out there, because it's just, there's so much effort that goes into content that's consumed so quickly. And I think that's one thing that I'm realizing with Instagram as well, and particularly with growing a community, is that it's not designed for long form content. Mm-hmm. It's not designed really for, the type of conversation we're having now. And so I'm doing other things and coming up with other ideas to make sure that that is something for the future when I have a bit more time. Like I've set up a blog, and, hopefully people will start to connect more and transition over to, joining in as a community on a blog and providing more of a platform for long form conversation.
That's what Creative Coffee Club, which was your interview format, videos were based on. Is that what you are more drawn to?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, who isn't? Like, this is the best. I love having chats with people and really understanding what makes people tick. And I think we can all learn so much from each other in doing that. So as you said, I have chats with creatives who I basically find online and find inspiring and reach out to, like I did with you. And if they say yes, which is so generous, then I have a chat with them and put it up on IGTV. And that works brilliantly right now. We're all on Instagram, right? We all know that when you upload a post, it's then forgotten within a day. And it's that type of thing where I think actually doing something like this and the channel that you're building on YouTube is so important, because you're providing real, like, in-depth information, knowledge to people that they can really access forever, which is amazing.
And it's really, as I'm sure you've learned by now too, it's really for my sanity too, because like you said, on Instagram, the content stays fresh for 24 to 48 hours. Maybe if you're lucky, you get something that goes viral, but no, it quickly tapers off too. But on YouTube, the content is mostly evergreen. No, I think the video that you found that I made was from a year ago, right? So it's relatively fresh in the YouTube space. And you were putting all this effort into making these long form content, and you're inviting people on. I'm sure they want to be seen by more people than whatever you can get in the first 1 to 2 days. But what's great is the content you created can already be repurposed to YouTube or your blog or other places that you're thinking about growing. And let's not forget, you're doing all of this while working full time. Like you're still a full-time attorney right now. So
Yeah.
that's amazing. I know you said no, you have your excuse of being quarantined for the third time, but that's some time management skills that you need to get that going. Because we're talking right now and it's at evening in your time and it's morning for me. So no, this is your 5 to 9. I know you enjoy it, so it doesn't feel like work, but I just want to give you that applause here for making it
Thank
happen.
you.
No, we talk a lot about being favorite new term, multi-hyphenate. What's that definition for you here?
I think multi-hyphenate means someone who wears multiple hats. And I don't just mean as a business owner, having to wear multiple hats. I mean someone that naturally gravitates towards not only being analytical and quite logical, which is my law brain, but also being quite creative and freeform. And I think a combination of the two is more common than we think. For so long through my 20s, I thought that you could only be one thing. You're put in a box really by society, or at least in the UK, when you grow up and you go through school.
Yeah.
You make choice after choice.
Yep.
And each choice narrows your world until, like me, maybe you end up going to uni and studying one subject, and then you end up having a career and you think that that's like it.
That's it.
And it's really subconscious. And some people are aware enough to not let that happen. But for me, it really became quite all consuming. So to have this realization that actually, no, I still have the creative spirit that I had before I started my career is really amazing. And I love the word multi-hyphenate because it really embodies that for me. What about you?
Yeah, I think one thing that you said resonated with me was in like early in our career, or we're just starting in our 20s, we make these choices that narrows down our path and we feel like that's it. And there's also pressure and a little bit of fear to deviate or to explore too much when we're young, because society rewards people that are focused in one path because, relatively speaking, like success happens faster if you focus on one thing. But we were too young to really know like what that thing was for us when we're 18 and entering like university, right? So it wasn't until we're in our late 20s, early 30s, sometimes for people even later, which is totally fine nowadays. It can happen at any age. We start to really ask ourselves, what is it that really make us happy? And what is it that we're here for in this world? Not to get too existential, but sometimes those questions do come up.
Yeah. And the number of people that I have found via this community at the Creators Coffee Club who've said exactly that. And lots of people who said that because of our conversation that we had, where you told your story and your journey is amazing. I really thought that I was alone in that, but it's just not the case.
Yeah, I thought so too. And ever since then, I don't know if it's serendipity, but I've noticed a lot of people coming onto your Creative Coffee Club account on Instagram and claiming their dual or multi-hyphenate identity. They're scientists, doctors, accountants. That's really fascinating that you're putting this community together. Your answer was interesting to me because you didn't put a title to it, right? Like to you, multi-hyphenate is someone who can use both their left and right brain. That's funny because earlier on in my career, in my bio on the website, that was my sort of like slogan that I said I was
Really?
left brain inclined and right brain inspired, because I was inspired to be a creative person, which I didn't feel comfortable claiming yet, but I was very left brain inclined because I'm used to thinking with logic and rationality and all of that with all the training that I've got in my previous career. My immediate reaction was just to the definition of that term was something more title based, but after hearing what you said, I like the fluidity because it invites people more in to identify with that term, right? And I think if we open it up to that definition, like I would say majority of people in the world can be multi-hyphenate. Sometimes if they're left brain strong, that other side of them just hasn't been awakened yet. Maybe there just needs to be a catalyst event to wake that up like it did for you and me.
Which is interesting because I don't know if I could identify that moment. Like, I don't know if I could identify what that catalyst was that suddenly spurted like, all this creativity. But I think you're right. I think it's probably there in everyone, and it's whether, the subconscious comes to the conscious, really. Yeah.
Was there a moment you decided to go for it, even though the process of claiming your creative identity was very gradual?
As soon as someone said to me, I think I'd like to buy a piece of your art, I thought, okay, I'm going to set up a shop. And it was as simple as that. I was like, you know what? Challenge accepted. I'm going to see if I can do it. I know nothing about doing that. And I only really rediscovering my artistic skills over the last 6 months. But why not? What's the worst that can happen? On reflection, I think I'm one of those people that makes a decision very quickly and then is rather impatient. So I did a lot of research using my legal brain, and I shared quite a lot of that on Instagram, which is very interesting because lots of people were identifying with the fact that actually I'm a very research-based person. That's like the left brain thinking going on. And then eventually I got to the point where I'd lined up all my ducks, I'd done all my research, and everything was perfectly set up. And I just froze, and I was like, oh God, now I've got to hit the button and I've got to do it. And for me, that was the hardest part, was just diving in and doing it. So I ended up one evening, I think it was like 9:30 at night, and I suddenly just got this gust of like bravado, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it now. So I completely ditched this whole marketing plan of promoting it for a week and doing all the things you're meant to do, and just thought, I'm going to do it now, because if I don't do it now, I'm going to bottle it. So released it all on Instagram and just got it over and done with. But the moral of the story for me was that I have a lot of excitement and energy for something when it's just about to happen, and then I get nerves, dive in anyway, and then it's only after the big event has occurred, where you've just done something that's totally outside of your comfort zone, that you slightly start to panic. And that's when the feelings of imposter syndrome and self-doubt started to come in more of the day-to-day, once the excitement had kind of subsided. And I think that's the stage I'm at now, is learning that actually the consistent small steps are often more difficult once you've done the diving in and you're in the room and you're like, okay, is someone going to call me a fraud tomorrow?
It's the space between the excitement and the milestones where you're left with your own thoughts and you're like, what have I done now? And then you're kind of like ruminating over things. What you said was, it could have been me saying all those things. I could relate to all of those things. I think we're more similar than not. I don't know if it's because of the left brain, right brain thing, but like when I get an impulse or inspiration, I make the decision really fast. And then I'm very deliberate in the planning process. I know it's going to happen. It's not even about getting it right. I almost like enjoy the research, right? Because you have to enjoy that part. Otherwise, you would just get it done. So speaking of imposter syndrome, that's also a recurring theme in a lot of the content that you create. Does that come more from the fact that you are new, putting yourself out there as a creative thing, or part of who you are?
I inherently have high levels of self-doubt. Also, mainly the way in which I'm sharing on social media is because I am sharing my creative journey as a way of trying to invite other people to share about theirs too. And you need one person to share to create the opportunity and like the safe space for people to do that. Of course, I'm very new at this, so there is a lot of self-doubt and feeling like I don't quite know where I'm going, and feeling like someone's gonna call me out any moment. I think everyone has a degree of self-doubt and moments in their life when they feel like they're a complete imposter in their own narrative. But at the moment, it's definitely coming out by virtue of me being at the very sort of first stages of rediscovering my creativity.
Yeah, I feel like imposter syndrome, we think it's the strongest when we're first starting out and trying something new, because we don't want to say something that we think, at least for those of us who try to be self-aware, we don't want to say something that is wrong, even though a lot of things, there's multiple ways of looking at multiple perspectives. But I would say even people who are successful, who are much later in their career, they have imposter syndrome too, because, I would say at different stages of creative business, you're always looking up at the next thing to achieve. And then to get there, you kind of have to up level yourself, and by filling the gap that you need to get to that next level. So there's always that discomfort with growth. I feel like growth comes with discomfort, right? And then to us, discomfort often means feeling like an imposter because we're not at that level yet. or like we don't know what it's like to be the next level successful or creative or
Yeah.
whatnot, whether it's in our art practice or in our career. So
Yeah.
uh,
And then even when we get there, and instead of patting ourselves on the back and doing a little dance, we're like, oh no, immediately panic that actually it was like luck or fate or something. And
yeah,
that someone is gonna say, what are you doing here? Why are you
yeah,
doing this when she's doing it too? She's doing it so much better, all that sort of negative self-talk.
yeah.
So I completely agree.
And so far that hasn't happened.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's so I mean, in terms of how I would try and deal with imposter syndrome, I always think that's an interesting one because people have such different coping mechanisms. But
Mhm.
I think that that's one thing I do is I challenge that thought and say, okay, well, where's the evidence? And more often than not, there's none, right? You've actually excelled, and
Yeah.
you've done better than you thought you would, because we tend to limit ourselves.
Kind of go through that self-talk when you're feeling that way. Does that happen right away, or you let the self-talk kind of get to a point? What does that happen in your like inner voice? I'm curious about that because I think a lot of people relate to that. And you get a sale, you get a next one, and you get, a dozen sales, and then things kind of slow down a bit. Is that when your imposter syndrome kicks in? And then do you immediately negate it with, hey, Charlie, listen, you just generated 10 sales from your Etsy shop. You're doing fine. No one is telling you you suck. Okay. They might think it, but they're not telling you it. I'm just kidding. You're not hearing anything from people. So, what is this feeling coming from?
I
What's that?
really wish that I had that on record and I could just play that to myself whenever I felt the initial. That's what we should be doing, because unfortunately it's not that straightforward, right?
Mhm.
We tend to, and I think your example is a good one. Say I had 2 sales, 3 sales in a week, which for me would be great, and then the next 2 weeks it's like, crickets, and there's no one out there and no one's interested. That might be the trigger for me to start thinking negatively.
Mhm.
But I think it then takes another few weeks to realize that that negative self-talk is going on. At least for me, I'm not that quick to the mark to be like, wait, hold on, just stop a second, and actually you're doing really well, and then starting the positive cycle. So I think we can find ourselves in basically pause mode creatively for a few weeks if we're not careful. And I certainly find that with then not creating because I don't feel in the headspace, and it's like this
Mhm.
horrible cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, and something I've learned too after like, doing multiple launches over the last few years, I don't know if it might help you, is there's always that lull that happens after a launch, especially the very first one. You're letting the world know, like, hey, I'm here, buy my stuff. Like, it's great to get a lot of support, but it's almost like an unsustainable level. I think that applies to every single launch. There's always that level of lull. And also, I tell myself too, in addition to like, you don't suck, you are like, people do like your stuff, is we have to market our products to get people to know
Mm.
that we exist, right? So just like all the energy that we put into launch, it's like how can we sustain that energy over time without feeling the pressure to put out new things all the time? That's something I'm still grappling with. Okay, people have bought 10 of my things. Now I need to make more. I need to make more. People want new things. Right? There's that training that, with social media, people want new content, like new products,
Mm.
seasonal releases, but we also have to respect our own creative energy too, that we're not just, a factory like churning out things around the clock. Have you had to
Totally.
deal with that feeling yet? That
Yeah,
pressure of like, I need to post new things. I need to post new art.
totally. And actually, I think one of the main things I'm learning, or at least trying to learn, is that you may think that you have shouted about your art 1,000 times too many, and that you are boring people, and that they've got the message and they just don't want to buy your art. But actually, if you think about it, especially on Instagram, there's so much content all the time that 10 people may have completely missed that you did a story the other day where you talked about, you showed your art and you talked about it, and you were basically trying to sell it, but they may have seen a post, and that post might have been the thing that triggered them into buying it. So much of this is just being your own best advocate and continuing to talk about your art and not letting the algorithm get to you. Continue posting about it, continue shouting about it. When you feel like making a new collection, go for it, but don't feel the pressure to continually put out new stuff just because you feel like a broken record. I think lots of the time people haven't heard you yet, because they haven't seen you, because the algorithm doesn't necessarily put everything you create on Instagram in front of everyone, which was a bit of a realization.
That has been my biggest challenge for years, I would say. It's like I used to think that everyone, like anytime I put out content, even before the algorithm, like anytime I put out content, everyone's looking, or like majority of people that follow me are seeing it. And if I post it every single day, then they're going to be annoyed and unfollow me. Same thing with emails I send out. People are going to be annoyed that I'm selling again. And then the price I had to pay was like I post like way less frequently than I should have. Even now, like I'm sometimes guilty of it. It's more just to preserve my own energy because I don't have someone managing my social media, right? But then, yeah, like you're saying, especially in 2021, something that we post to our feed gets seen by maybe 2 to 5% of our followers. The bigger the account you get, the less Instagram gives you to see your content. Then you have to put it on your story, put it on TikTok, put it on YouTube. That's a whole other job by itself
It's
alongside
mad.
creating a lot of the creative work I create. They're not all for sale, right? Sometimes it's just for content, and sometimes it's just to share. So I don't know what the ROI, like the return on investment of my creativity for those things are, but it just goes back to like you have to create, you have to enjoy the process.
Yeah,
Otherwise, burnout can happen very, very fast. Before you know it, it'll just catch
totally.
up on you.
And that's
Yeah.
where I think also that, like, we touched on this when we were talking about the Creators Coffee Club and the fact I've set up a blog for that. I think also there's ways in which as artists we can try to step away from Instagram a little bit and rely not only on the algorithm putting you in front of other people. And that's also a way of trying to slow down the pressure of churning out new pieces of art for sale.
Yeah.
And I mean, I haven't succeeded at this yet because 2 people have signed up to my email list, but you never know. I created an email list. It's way early, right? I only just started out, but I thought, you know what, put it up there. If only 5 people are on there, that's great. And it's a way of communicating with people that is more evergreen because
Yeah.
it's just me and them. You made me think of that because you just mentioned emails.
Yeah.
And I wondered how you'd found having an email list and how you use that to really try and like slow down the process a little bit.
I say email and YouTube are two places that have definitely allowed me to slow down a bit and not get caught up in the dopamine rush of social
Yeah.
media. First of all, I appreciate you being transparent with your numbers. Like you posted on IG that you made 10 sales and you just told me that you only had 2 email signups, which is 2 better than 0, right? But then you could have as easily just gave a vague number. So I think these earlier successes are worth celebrating. And maybe someone who's watching who's have 0 emails, was thinking about starting an email list, thought like, it's not too bad. Email for my business, it's been a great growth engine. It's slow, but the quality I'm getting on my email list is higher, much higher than Instagram. I've been growing my Instagram for probably 5 years now. My email list is maybe like a fraction, like half of what I have on my Instagram. But every time I send out an
Wow.
email, I almost always generate sales, but I can't say that about Instagram, right? It's just there's different people that are attracted to different platforms. And I noticed that too between YouTube and email. And another thing I will say is to make you feel better about your 2 sign up is people on Instagram hate leaving Instagram. That's why Instagram make it as easy as possible to shop on Instagram with their shoppable, they had shoppable tags and now they have Instagram shop. On one end, it's people hate leaving the platform. On the other end, Facebook, Instagram try really hard to keep people in there, right? I think that's more of a reason than anything else. So anything that takes them out of the platform is a friction point for Facebook and Instagram. So yeah, I don't think it's anything that you're doing wrong. It's people just have that natural resistance, whether or not it's trained by the platform, but that's just unfortunate fact.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that just because only 2 people signed up doesn't mean it wasn't worth doing. That's
Mhm.
kind of the approach I'm trying to take at the moment. I like shiny things and I like trying new things. And I get very excited about that big moment where all my hard work has happened and I've released it into the world, like the launch of the shop. But I'm really trying to focus on the small steps and like the small consistent changes you can make to build something, which
Yeah.
requires patience, right? We're never
Yes.
going to be, well, some people are overnight successes, but most people aren't. Most people develop a strong creative practice by just taking the time and focusing on what you really enjoy and connecting with people that really want to connect with you back. And it's worth noting that, just to, again, to encourage anyone that's kind of doubted setting up an email list, for example, because they don't think anyone will sign up. Yes, only 2 people signed up. They weren't family members, but they both replied to my email.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Which means they are hugely valuable.
Yeah.
And they are so supportive. And that's the key. Focusing on numbers on Instagram is so addictive, but it doesn't mean as much really as the 2 people that replied to my email and bought something from me, you know?
Yeah, you want those 2 people that read every word or most of what you write and send out than 1,000 people where only 2% of them, any random 2% of them may see your content any given day. That's not to say Instagram is useless, right? Like you've had a lot of luck on Instagram actually. So we're not here to bash Instagram. Like we have different relationship with it. And I think it shifts over time too. Like sometimes you just need a break from it. With email, your breaks are the time that you spend between sends, right? Like you don't need to force a break on email. Email is something that you can schedule to write something that inspires you or feel like is helpful for your audience once a month. You can start it even when I started, I was sending email once every quarter, and that's still better than nothing. And now I'm shooting for once a month, which is still not a lot, but every time I put the effort into it, I get replies. Sometimes they buy something and other times they don't, and that's okay, but they stay on the list. I'm an email evangelist for sure. Even just to clarify, the email list is for your creative coffee club, right?
So I have 2.
Oh, okay.
I have one for, so the one that I'm referring to is my shop one. So for where I want to sell my art.
Yeah.
And the Creatives Coffee Club one is an email list that has more people on it. People have signed up. That one's definitely been more successful by way of numbers. I've been working on getting to know people on that page for a lot longer. So I think that just reflects, again, the consistent small steps point that we were talking about. There's one for the Creatives Coffee Club, which is linked on my Instagram bio, and there's one for my art page as well.
We'll add all your links to the video description below so you can check her out. It's a great community. It's not limited to illustrators or artists. Right? You're welcoming anyone who's claiming their creative identity, whether you're new or you've been doing creative things all your life. So you have 3 things going on that you're juggling. You have your legal career, you have your online shop, and you have your community. Have you set out any goals for yourself? What does success look like by the end of first year?
For me, it would look like just showing up every day and just taking small steps to continue to claim my space as a creative, which actually is hard enough as it is. I've started a journaling practice, which is just all about understanding my creativity and making sure that I'm making one piece of art a day. And by that, I don't mean like a portrait. I mean a doodle. Whilst I'm on the phone or something. And I just really want to try and train myself to have faith that those things will then build up to the big goals that you're referring to, which at the moment, I don't know what they are. I think for the Creatives Coffee Club, I do have ideas about how I want the community to grow, but also to stay cozy as it is, and to make sure that people remain connected, and it not to become another page on Instagram that is all about me putting content out there for me as opposed to for everyone else. I want it to feel like a place where people can genuinely connect. And so I'm thinking of ways to do that. And one of the ways, this is probably my only solid goal that I can answer truly to your question, is to have a podcast. I would absolutely love to do that. And that is something I'm working on, but with doing law full time and everything else in between, it's going to be something I need to do when I've got a holiday in the diary, I think.
Have you thought about like what format it's going to be?
I'd like to replicate what I'm doing on Instagram with inviting creatives on to talk about their creative journey and to hear from them their tips for people like me who have only just discovered or rediscovered that they can do both, and to give people reassurance that they can do that, because there's been a huge amount of support for that content on Instagram, including the interview I did with you. Also, I'm dabbling with the idea of doing individual episodes as well, where I talk about what I've learned through, my own experiences, which is the bit I'm struggling with a bit more, because that means you have to talk about yourself for like 45 minutes, which
Yeah.
can be challenging. So I might do a bit of a poll on that one to see if anyone's actually interested in listening to me,
Yeah,
my
I
inner
hear
thoughts.
you.
But
It's always easier when you have someone else to give you give you the
yeah,
content. You just have to,
just
extract it
probe
out
them.
of them with the right questions. Yeah, but it's always easier than talking about yourself. I can relate. That's why when I started a YouTube channel, it was just me painting and I think that was it. Like I didn't even show my face for a year and a half, and then I were talking about scanners and printers and everything else that's not about us, more about
Yeah,
how we do things because it's less intimidating. But I think that's just kind of part of the process. I think it's more about what I noticed with my some of the videos I've been putting out as experiment lately is people just want that validation or like
okay.
that comfort in knowing that someone else is going through it and someone else is feeling the way they did or they do. That's why
Mm,
I brought you on because I think you're at a similar phase in the journey than a lot of people who are watching, those scanner printer videos. And
mm,
at some point, they just get your fatigue from watching the how to's and the strategies, right? Like a lot of it's in the mind set of whether you can do it. So I
mm.
think that motivation doesn't come from like direct advice sometimes. It's just more about like
Yeah.
being heard and being seen, if that
No,
makes
I think
sense.
that's so valuable. And actually, to be honest, I don't really have that many tips. That's kind of the point. Like, I'm just living this experience right now, right?
And a lot of people who are watching are too, or they're maybe like
Yeah.
a couple steps behind, but just want to encourage more people to overcome their self doubt and imposter syndrome and know that you could launch a site and if nothing if even if no one buys right away, like you'll still be alive. You'll be fine. Okay, well, let's wrap up, but I have a bonus question for you. What is your biggest highlight of your creative journey so far in your somewhat short 6-month span? Is there anything that you're proud of?
I think that the proudest moment so far has probably been following my gut instinct. And what I mean by that is that when I started the Creatives Coffee Club, I say when I started, I didn't start it, it happened. And
Mm-hmm.
there's that amazing moment that I'm sure that everyone can relate to, where you you have an idea and you just act on it without thinking about it too much. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the specific moment I'm thinking about, is the first time I did that, where I didn't overthink before, I just did. And that moment was thinking, actually, I really would like to have a chat with someone, record it, put it
And
on
you did.
Instagram. And I did it. And I just reached out to 3 people that I had been looking at on Instagram and following their journey, and really was really inspired by, including yourself. And sent them a very chilled DM and asked them the question. And lo and behold, all 3 of them said yes. And no one to this day has said no to having those chats with me that I have
Wow.
asked, which it just brings, me back to community is everything, and actually give people the chance to say yes, and give people the
Yeah.
chance to believe in you and really like root for you, because more often than not, they will do the positive thing, the thing
Yeah.
you're hoping for.
Wow.
So I think those creative
100%.
chats were the best for me. Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that you got 100% response rate is incredible. But I'm sure you've vetted the guests that you're bringing on would be relatable or valuable for people that's in your community, right? It's like you weren't mass DMing people with the same template message. And that's a skill in itself that's valuable in the creative business too. Like I had to learn that from growing my wholesale and having to email retailers to carry my products. So just, those are all transferable skills
Yeah.
for
No, but
creatives.
I think that's so true. It definitely required a degree of connection, and kind of I could feel that I would connect with those people. But the takeaway was probably just doing it, stepping outside of my comfort zone and doing
Yeah.
it. And the takeaway for everyone else from that, I think, is that people can surprise you, and actually the worst case that's in your head is relatively unlikely to
And
happen.
that is a perfect way to wrap up the video, because I always end my videos with, you don't have to have everything figured out. You just have to take the next step. So nice wrap up. We tell people how they can join your Creative Coffee Club email list and Instagram.
The Instagram page, the handle is called The Creatives Coffee Club. You just need to follow and give me a DM if you want to say hi. I love to chat. You can click on www.thecreativescoffeeclub.com through my Instagram page, which will take you to the blog where you can sign up for the newsletter.
Great. And what about your Etsy shop or your creative business?
Yes. So then on the shop side of things, my handle is Of Charlie's Making. And again, you can follow and access my Etsy shop via the link in my bio.
All right. Thank you so much, Charlie. It's been a wonderful hour chatting with you. We'll stay in touch on Instagram like we always do.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Kathy. I really appreciate it. Speak
Bye.
soon. Bye.